The universe is never wrong, but it's up to us to take the action and create the outcome.
Welcome to Behind Their Success. This podcast is for people who are feeling stuck on their entrepreneur journey or in their careers. It's for people who want to scale and grow their businesses, learn about the power of mindset, or they just know there's more out there and they want to start making changes. I'm Peyton Squires, the host of the podcast. I was never cut out to be an employee, and when I was an employee, I was bored out of my mind. So I made a plan. I studied and passed the CPA exam in 8 months while working, all with the end goal in mind of quitting my job and starting my own business. I did that in 2014 and has been an amazing wild ride since. So now let's hear from other entrepreneurs and what mindsets, and probably more important, what actions they have taken that have created and led to their success. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Behind Their Success podcast. I am Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Ron Nussbaum. He founded BuilderComms, a communication platform tailored for the construction industry, aiming to revolutionize how builders and contractors communicate and collaborate on projects. Additionally, he hosts the Construction Champions podcast, where he engages in insightful conversations with industry leaders and experts. His mission is to challenge traditional norms, drive innovation, and inspire positive change in the construction sector. Ron, welcome on the podcast.
It is great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. So introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us about what you do currently.
Yeah, so I got in the Marine Corps in 2011, 2010, and I ended up in residential construction. I've done everything from digging the hose to running the company, and that led me to developing a communication platform for the construction industry. I like to say it's if Slack and Dropbox hooked up on a weekend and had a baby for the construction industry, that would be BuilderComms. So that's what I do now. It's what I've done for the past about a year and a half. I brought this product from a napkin to concept to market to paying users. And we actually, this year, we were just a top 20 startup for the International Builders Show, the IBS show in Vegas, which is the biggest residential construction trade show in the world. So it was a great honor to do that. And I just rock and roll, man. I get shit done.
Heck yeah, dude. Absolutely, man. Give us a little more detail of your background. You got in the Marine Corps and you started working in the construction industry. Give us a little more color to that and ultimately how you ended up creating the software.
Yeah, absolutely. Dive right into that. So I've done everything from literally digging the hose to running an 8-figure a year construction business, a couple hundred employees. And during that time, I've dealt with some pissed off homeowners. And I got tired of that. Like I really dove into why, not just us, but why does the construction industry as a whole really have a bad reputation when it comes to customer experience? And what I found was it was very rarely the guys, it was very rarely the work. It was all communication and documentation around these projects. I was always the person in the driveway getting my ass chewed. But I had nothing to do with any of this. Like, it was out of my hands until that moment. And I was like, okay, so this is just wrong on many levels. How do we fix this? And one night I was laying in bed and it just hit me. It's like, if I had software that worked as air traffic control and just got the right people talking to each other. So if there was a scheduling question, the customer was actually talking to the person in charge of the schedule. They weren't talking to Mary, the receptionist, or Steve, the sales guy. They're actually, we create these conversations that need to happen with the right people. So there's no longer any of the he said, she said. And then we create the documentation that goes with it. So by getting everything in one place, getting it out of the emails, getting it out of the text messages, we now create these channels of communication with living, breathing records of pictures, documents. It really has become a data center for these construction projects. All the stuff that is typically scattered everywhere. You have all the emails and text messages. You have all the papers sitting on everybody's desk. And then the photos that are just on everybody's phones throughout the company. What we did was we just made a simple place to put all that where a photo is a photo, a document's a document, and a conversation's a conversation. And if it doesn't happen in builder comms, it just didn't happen. And that is what we've created. And we're really a piece of software that walks alongside the other project management software. What I built was where every piece of software failed me, was when it came to how do I handle this communication. There's great scheduling stuff out there. There's great software that does all this. But when it came to how do I handle the communications between my customers, the company, everybody involved, all stakeholders, that's where software always let me down. And I
Right.
just built something super simple. I learned to say no to my developer early on because I was building something for the construction industry, and I understood like it just had to be something that people could be able to use in 5 to 10 minutes. And that's
Yep.
what we built. That's what Builder Comms is.
That's a really cool concept. As a guy that has personally built 2 different houses in the last 5 years, that sounds amazing. And you're right. Like my experience wasn't necessarily a terrible one, but I was building in a tough environment, inflationary environment, and the product was great. The people are even good people. The communication was lacking big time. And to get, it was just tough on my part. I never knew what was going on until last minute which just frustrates the guys. Out.
And one of the problems with that is you as a homeowner don't even quite understand who to reach out to. Like you
Mhm.
want to get some of these answers. So like we start to facilitate that. Homeowners love our product because we build out an app that homeowners download, and that's where all this stuff interchanges for them. So they no longer have to dig through these emails. They don't have to worry about it. Within a couple of clicks, they're talking to the right person at the company when they have a question. And that it just provides so much transparency, and it just gets the stakeholders having the conversations they need to have. I don't know how many times I had guys show up to a job site that wasn't ready, or the customer waited to ask questions until the crew was on site. And that's the worst possible time because typically these questions are having changes that are going to delay the
Mhm.
project.
Like everything. Yeah.
And when that happens, in the world that I lived in, like we were at fault no matter what, because we're
Mhm.
the construction company. Like,
Yeah. Now the
and
responsibility ultimately falls on you, right?
yeah, so no matter what, even if it's something that a homeowner could have had a proactive conversation about, if they don't reach out and have that conversation, it delays the project. They're pissed at us. So
Mhm.
I needed to create this environment where that kind of stuff didn't happen, where homeowners were empowered to reach out and ask the questions because they were new. They were either talking to that superintendent, that manager, the foreman, somebody that could actually answer project specific questions. Or if they had a scheduling question, they weren't calling the sales rep and leaving a voicemail wondering if they were going to get a call back.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about different businesses and entrepreneurship and everything on the podcast. It's so much. And the longer I'm in business doing what I do, I realize it's rarely ever about the work itself, right? It's always about relationship and communications. That's really where all the problems stem from, is just poor communication.
Yeah, it's not a construction specific problem. It's
Mhm.
definitely across the board.
Humanity problem.
Yeah. I think we just overcomplicate it. Like I use the word simple a lot because that's what I just built a simple solution. And I think too often we just think everything has to be complex and complicated,
Mm.
especially when you start dealing with software. And that's not the case because that's not what people want. I like myself and most people just want something that I can go on, sign up. If I want to buy the subscription, do the free trial, and just be able to utilize without having to go through 30 days worth of training or
Yeah.
any. To me, like that's where software companies are missing the boat. And that's why we have a lot of the communication breakdowns because the tool is out there people don't like and they hate. Like when I say Slack and Dropbox had a baby, a lot of people use Slack, but I don't run into very many people that like it.
Yeah. I use it daily. It's all right. That's cool, Rod. You've had certain levels of success here, right? You've ran construction companies, building a software company.
What would you say is your number one skill? Like, what leads you to have the level of success you've had?
I'm an action taker. I get shit done. And that's typically the hardest part. I don't believe stuff has to be 100% pretty to start. The main thing is taking that step, taking that action. And I have what I tell my team and I tell anybody we bring on is like at Builder Comms, we have one role that my team has held me accountable to. So now I have to hold everybody accountable to is we can have fires on the boat, but we can't sink the ship. And I'm an action taker, so that inherently will create some fires. When stuff pops up, I would test the waters immediately. If I have a thought, like, let's test the waters real quick, see what happens. As long as it's not something that's going to sink the ship, we can have a sail on fire. Like, that can get put out. We can put a new sail up. Who knows? Like, we burn that sail down and we put up a sail that's 10 times bigger.
Water.
You don't know, but we can never sink the ship. So I'm an action taker, but I also understand that principle. Is like, I can never entirely sink the ship. Like, we can't take action that has too much risk to sink the ship, but we need to be taking action every day. Like, we're still in startup mode. I meet with my team. It's what do we need to do? What can we test the waters with? Send out some email, whatever that looks like. That's just be taking action.
Yeah, that's some really great stuff. And, that is something that I've gone through a little bit of transition in my business where I've really gotten a whole lot more support, where just in the last few years, or really in the last year or so, I've been able to become less and less of a practitioner and more just having the time and space to work on the business. And that's almost something I say to myself every day. It's like, come in here and I'm like, okay, let's just start stirring some stuff up, right? Let's start sending some emails, like just start stirring, start creating something moving, right? And it's so important, like and especially people that listen to podcasts and are into self-development. So many people get stuck, especially early, get stuck in that loop of just consuming information and not necessarily ever taking action. Knowledge isn't power, it's potential power, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to take those steps to put it in action.
No, that's absolutely true. And I think that's why we see so many people get stuck in the ID stage, or why we see so many people never decide to make that next step. Like, I bought and sold a cleaning company with my wife, and that was purely action. Like, the opportunity presented itself. I was like, this isn't going to kill us. If this completely combusts, it's not going to be whatever. But within 12 months, we bought, put in all the systems, put everything together, and sold it for 5x. And it was a great experience. A couple of good things came out of that. My wife doesn't want to work for me.
No way.
And we proved that we could go into something that it wasn't distress, but it was complete chaos. The phone was ringing off the hook, but it was a completely chaotic environment.
Yeah.
And
Systems issue all the way.
absolutely. I went in there and helped my wife. I guided her and like, here's what we're going to do. I need you to do this. And we did it. And like I said, 12 months later, we sold it for 5x what our initial investment was. But that was purely action. If I wasn't willing to say, all right, let's look at this. If we do this, this could be awesome. It's not going to, like I said, it's not going to sink the ship. Let's just go do it. And I think most people are just getting that analyzed. And I watched it when we were selling it. Like, you get in these conversations, people they're too afraid to go to that next level or pull the trigger because they're stuck in that analyzing, or people love the ID. And I think some people, you have to really ask yourself, like, am I meant to be an entrepreneur or am I more of an intrapreneur? I think I have a lot of great both of those in me. Like, I'm really good working in a company, growing a company, scaling a company, and I'm really good out on my own as well. But you have to ask yourself, is that like the stress levels and all is a lot higher when you're out doing it on your own? I think that's why people like, it's hard to pull that trigger. You're constantly there's a lot of fight that you have to have. And it's okay. Like if you're like in that phase where like you're finding it really hard to pull the trigger on something or take that action, I would examine that, because you can make a lot of money working for somebody and growing somebody else's business. But you have to be all in on that. Like you can't be thinking, I might want to go do this. I have this idea. You got to make a decision and then take action. I say a lot that the universe is never wrong, but it's up to us to take the action and create the outcome. Like we'll be in the right places at the right time, but we have to take the action and we have to create the outcome.
Yeah. That's interesting. You're able to work inside of a business and then also outside of the business. I think that's a unique skill set. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I know that have grown large businesses, they'd all get fired their first day inside the business because they have that high self-confidence. They have that driving ability, and that trying to put some reins on them, they're not usually big fans of that.
Well, and I think it's about the environment that you allow yourself to be in. It's not necessarily about having reins on you. And I'm talking a lot more to the people that, when we're talking the indecisiveness there, is like either pull the trigger one way or the other, because you're like living in purgatory. Like you have this idea, it's not, and I'm going to say something here that like probably going to piss some people off. But like, there's no glory in just having an idea to talk about it when you're out with your buddies hanging out or you're at family events. Oh, I got this great idea. I think I'm going to do that. Nobody cares until it's something, and then they don't care even more. And they only care when you're at this peak pinnacle of success. So make the decision to do what you truly want to do and be happy. I mean, in this process of launching Buildercoms and doing all of this, I left brick and mortar. We sold everything and we moved south because we made the decision we wanted to be down by the ocean and not up in Michigan where we were at. So like we made decisions based on what did we want our life to look like, and then we took action around them. And we can't be scared of that.
Yeah, man, that's such great advice. When you talk about looking for happiness or fulfillment or whatever, it's like, it doesn't even matter what you pick. You just got to pick something and dive into it. And then only when you dive into it can you start to make adjustments to even figure out what will make you fulfilled and happy.
Yeah, because it's just like an idea. Like it's just these thoughts of what we think. And if we're constantly thinking, I would rather have this, or I wish it was like this or that, we're stuck in that purgatory.
Torturing yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You're in misery. And who knows? Like the same thing when we made the decision to move, and I had to get my wife on board because she wasn't 100% on board to begin with. And you know what? At the end of it, when we were having the conversations, and it just came down for her, is like, what's the worst that could happen? It's like we moved down there and we hate it, and we moved back up there. Like, and I was like, absolutely. Now you're speaking my language. That is the worst that happens, is you go do that, you don't like it, and then you come back. But we absolutely love it. As my wife says, it's one of the best decisions we've ever made in our entire life. But we were willing to take that action and live in some fear. Because that's what the main thing. If we want to get to the root why people don't go do stuff, it's because there's a fear that's involved. And you have to live in that fear for a while until you develop the confidence to understand it's just going to be there, but it don't matter. Like I have tons of fears now, but like they don't necessarily matter because they're always going to be there. That self-doubt, all of that is always going to be knocking on your door. It's our objective to show up every day and close the door on that and go get shit done. And that's how you close the door on that, is by doing stuff and facing action.
Yeah. And it's just facing it, right? You run away from any of those things. You have these dreams and these goals you talk about with your buddies or whatever. But if you never face that, man, that thing's going to hang over you the rest of your life. And it's a matter of taking action, making a decision. But even before that, it's, a lot of people haven't even taken the time to know what they want, or even slowed down enough to decide, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I'm going to go for. And here's the plan to do it. Almost nobody has that.
And it's amazing. So I come from the construction industry. That's the foundation. Like we built. If you think about,
That's how you build a house, right?
yeah. So think about it. If your life was a house, what you're talking about right there is the foundation. You can't just show up and start putting a house up without having that foundation unless you want it to keep falling over. And like you said, nobody does this. And then what happens is they're constantly in chaos. They're constantly in some kind of disaster.
And they never build anything.
Yeah, it keeps falling down. And then what do they say all the time is, oh, I can't. And every time I try to do something, everything just collapses. It's a complete shit show. It's this, it's that. Well, what did the foundation look like that you set out to do that? Because anybody can just start throwing a bunch. I can go out here and pick up a bunch of sticks and start building something, and it's going to not last long. I might look cool. My neighbors might come over and talk to me, like, "Hey, Ron, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm building this structure out of these sticks. It's going to be awesome." And the first windstorm that comes through, it'll be over in my neighbor's yard because I had no plans. I had no foundation. I was just throwing something up and creating a conversation around it.
Yeah.
We got to get out of that.
Man, that's some really good stuff. That's really good stuff. You credit being an action taker for a lot of your success. What would you say are some of the mistakes you've made, or some of the things you've really learned, lessons that you've learned along the way that are some interesting ones?
Yeah, no, the list is long. Everything from, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, getting stuff in writing, taking care of yourself. Like, we don't live in a handshake society, even though we might try to think it is. Take care of yourself and your family first. I've been down that road of not protecting that interest how I should have. And stay true to who you are. I think most of my failures, most of my mistakes, whatever we want to call them, would be when I deviated from who Ron Nussbaum is. When BuilderComms first went to market, we went to market under a different brand because I was trying to be like the SaaS company, the software company. And it was a miss. Because our market's the construction industry. Our market is who I am. All I had to do is just be true to that. And 6 months later, I ended up rebranding the company. It cost me a ton of money, a ton of time, and missed opportunities that we spent the first 12 months building a different brand, doing all of this stuff. So just stay true to yourself. And what does that look like? Look at your end customer and be okay to just make the decisions. Like BuilderComms is just what it is. And that's fine because Ron is just what Ron is. I got alignment with this stuff. And the more alignment you can have, the less failures you're going to have. Because that's really when we fail. Like, when you think about it, and I don't necessarily look at stuff as being a failure. You only fail if you quit. I haven't quit yet. I would just say, like, all of this stuff is just opportunities to understand what's wrong. That's what ends up happening. But you're going to make a ton of them. There's going to be a ton of mistakes. You're going to fail every day. Just said it a while back on social media is like, I failed in the past. I would continue to fail. And then one day, everybody would just say, like, I'm some overnight success.
That's the plan. And
that's what it like that. But that's what it is like, here we are.
Oh, it is.
Like, we're doing this podcast. I live in a order to failure because I'm a high action taker. There's all this shit going on all the time. We're pushing forward. Stuff's growing. Like, we're moving in the right direction. But in order to do that at a high level and push hard, it involves me mentally having to just push through a bunch of shit all the time. And I don't think people think about that. That's not something people think about. It's why that foundation has to be so strong, because storms are going to come through and they're going to take out a quarter of that house and you're going to have to rebuild it. It's the same thing as the boat, the ship. Like, you can never sink the ship, but you're going to have fires on there. And you got to be willing to run around with buckets of water and not buckets of gasoline. That's entrepreneurship. That's being a business owner.
Yeah. And man, it's the ups and downs with that. And entrepreneurship is just going through the ups and downs and being okay with it, or not even okay with it. I guess just keep you don't even have to be okay with it. You just got to keep walking.
Well, you just have to understand, like, that's what it is. There are ups and downs, but you just have to look at it as just a straight line. There's going to be dips and valleys. You can't emotionally respond that way. I try to keep as emotionally even keeled as I can, because if you let the really, really high times get you really high and the really, really low times get you really low, it's going to suck a lot. But you can have those highs and lows, but don't let them be so high. Don't let them be so low. Celebrate some of the wins, but don't, like, it's not necessarily a life-changing event. You don't let yourself get too high on it, because that means it's the farther you got to come down just to get to base. I don't think people understand, like, when you have that baseline and you go super high on a win, there's a down that's going to happen to just get you back to center. And if you go way down, you have to dig yourself back up to that base. So the less you let yourself dip or go up, and you just control your emotions and understand, yeah, hey, that was great. That was really, really good. We got to continue doing this and doing that. Or, hey, that sucked. I understand that sucked, but here's what we need to do. Here's what we learned from it. Don't let the emotions go crazy, because if your emotions are crazy, go look through your company. It's going to be the same way.
Yeah. And it's timely, this message, because I feel like I went on that roller coaster with it. Like, it's a Friday when we're recording this, but this week was a total roller coaster like that, where Monday afternoon, I was like, man, we got some things rolling here. This is awesome. This is great. And then by 24 hours later, I was hit with some stuff that just, I'm like, wow, where did this come from? And it's no joke. The thought that came to my mind, I was like, I got too excited yesterday. No joke. That was the thought that came through my mind.
And then when that stuff hits you, the fall is even farther, because then you're going past neutral down into the netting of it. It really seems like a long fall. I still struggle with this sometimes. Like, it's a hard thing to not really get excited or not really get down. But as you learn to control that, it just makes everything a lot easier, because it's all going to happen. Everything's going to continue to happen. It's hard to predict it. If you're growing anything, that's just what it is. Now, if you're running a stable business and you're not chasing growth and you're just putting in operations and you're learning to be the most efficient, you can start to take that stuff out of it. But I'm going to guess most of the listeners out there are not at that stage where they're saying, hey, we're just going to make this the most efficient machine we possibly can. Most people are out there trying to grow their businesses right now and continue to grow. And anytime you're doing that, there's going to always be wins and losses.
Yeah, that's great, Ron. Man, this has been a great conversation. Ron, what's the best way people can connect with you?
You're at BuilderComs, COMS.com is a great place to go connect with me. All of our social media is on there, as well as everything about the company. And I'm everywhere. If you search Ron Nussbaum, you can't miss me.
Awesome, Ron. I appreciate you, man. Anything else you want to leave for the listeners?
Just go take some action today, but don't sink the ship.
Great advice, man. Guys, thanks for tuning in, man. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires, or going to PeytonSquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.